The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a pale, unarmed human seated calmly in the center of the interrogation chamber. Bright lights reflected off the polished obsidian walls, casting long, unnatural shadows that seemed to shift even when nothing moved. The human looked up and smiled. "Oh, good. Visitors. I was starting to think the welcome party forgot about me." General Zixthar loomed in the doorway, a towering mass of chitin and armor. For blood-red eyes blinked independently as he stepped in. Behind him, two Thali guards flanked the entrance, psionic disruptors humming faintly in their claws. "You are Ethan Drake," Zixthar said, voice clicking like bone on stone. "In the flesh," Ethan said pleasantly, gesturing to himself. "Mostly." Zixthar ignored the quip and scanned him with a flick of his antennae. "You carry no weapons. No neural shielding. No mental dampeners. I like to travel light." Ethan leaned back in the chair, completely at ease. "And besides, you're the ones who brought me here. I assumed the dress code was defenseless prisoner." Zixthar's mandibles clicked twice. A universal Thali sign for annoyance. The room darkened as psychic energy began to coil through the air. Purple veins of psionic current crackled across the chamber's walls. Ethan's smile didn't waver. "You humans are arrogant," Zixthar said, stepping forward. "Do you not realize where you are?" "Sure," Ethan replied. "Cthal-Zor. Home of the Confederacy's elite mind-rippers. Psychic Central. Great coffee, terrible hospitality." Zixthar reached out, claws hovering near Ethan's temples. "You will tell us why Earth resists our readings. Why your minds are clouds when they should be glass. You ever try reading a storm?" Ethan said softly. "Sometimes it reads you back." The general scoffed and pressed in. The chamber filled with a low hum, like a tuning fork striking the base of the skull. Psychic pressure slammed into Ethan's consciousness, raw, aggressive, invasive. Zixthar's eyes rolled back as he plunged into the human's mind. He expected resistance. Static, confusion, perhaps some jumbled barrier. What he found was noise. Laughter, shouting, explosions. A toddler screaming about dinosaurs. A sitcom laugh track. Then silence. A single goat bleated once, then exploded. Zixthar recoiled instantly. Blood leaked from his ear canals. He stumbled back, colliding with the wall. Ethan tilted his head. "Wow. You got to the goat already? Usually takes longer." The guards tensed, eyes darting between their incapacitated general and the man still calmly sitting, legs crossed like he was waiting for a table at a restaurant. Zixthar groaned. "What did you do? I told you not to poke around. My brain's not OSHA certified." The chamber lights flickered. One of the guards raised a comm unit. A female voice echoed through the room's speakers. "This is Seer Valerin. Pause the session immediately." Zixthar growled. "He's contaminated. His mind is infected." Ethan shrugged. "Not infected. Just layered. Like cake. Only some layers are trauma. And one is jazz." The door slid open again, and a slender, robed figure entered. Valerin's silvery skin shimmered faintly, her long fingers folded calmly in front of her. Unlike Zixthar, she approached with caution, scanning Ethan not with tech, but with intuition. "I am Valerin," she said, bowing slightly. "You are Ethan Drake." "Still am. You guys love repeating names." She studied him for a long moment. "You are not what you appear to be." "Neither is your general," Ethan replied. "He thought I'd be an open book. Turns out I'm more of a pop-up." Valerin smiled faintly, the first alien to do so. "You are shielded. But not by technology. Nope. Then how? Ethan leaned forward, voice calm but edged. You ever spend 10 years in combat zones watching friends die, lie to your own family about what you did, bury trauma so deep it forgets your name, then train your brain to weaponize it? She blinked slowly. That, Ethan said, is how. The silence stretched. Zixtar pushed himself upright, hissing softly. We should dissect him. Ethan grinned. Great plan. But you may want to find your missing scientist first. The room froze. What? Valerin asked. Threnla. The eager one with the scanning headset. She tried to peek into my dreams last night. He looked up at the ceiling. She's still in there, I think. Somewhere between a Chucky, cheese and a drone strike. Zixtar's expression twisted. Lies. Valerin turned to the guards. Check the labs. The door shut behind them. Ethan stretched. So. Now that I've given you a tour of my gray matter, mind if I ask a question? Valerin raised a brow. Why are you really so afraid of us? She hesitated. Because your species shouldn't be unreadable, she said finally. Even the oldest minds in the galaxy crack under psionic pressure. But you're kind? You smile. You joke. And behind your eyes, there is war. Ethan stood, slowly. We tried being polite, he said. We tried being quiet. But you came into our heads without knocking. So now, we knock back. The lights dimmed. Somewhere far away, alarms began to blare. Looks like your friends are learning that right now, Ethan added. Valerin stared at him. You're not here to talk. Ethan's smile faded just slightly. No, he said. I'm here to listen. And for the first time, the seer felt the edges of her thoughts soften. Someone was knocking. From inside. The Thali Council chamber echoed with hushed tension. Seer Valerin stood at the center, hands clasped tightly, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of unease in her expression. He didn't resist the probe, she said flatly. He redirected it. A subconscious labyrinth, built with intention. That man is not a diplomat. He's a precision-engineered psychological weapon. Across from her, the Thali High Vizier, a gaunt being whose psionic field buzzed with raw pressure, narrowed his eyes. And Threnla? Still catatonic. Brain activity is nonlinear. She hums. Laughs. Speaks in riddles about cheeseburgers and something called New Jersey. She's lost in his mental construct. Murmurs spread. The chamber dimmed slightly as several psychics instinctively withdrew their fields, afraid they'd be targeted next. The Vizier's voice was ice. We've underestimated humans. Zixtar, still recovering, grunted from the corner. Then we correct the mistake. Now. Valerin turned sharply. You want to use the convergence protocol? For minds linked for a full dive? Exactly. Valerin hesitated. That's dangerous. He'll know. Zixtar sneered. Let him. For minds linked by thought, memory, and shared focus formed a shimmering psychic web around Ethan. Seer Valerin, General Zixtar, and two elder psions stood in a circle, hands raised, eyes unfocused. Ethan watched them from the observation room, feet casually on the table, sipping tea. Group therapy? You should have just asked, he said with a smirk. He closed his eyes. Let them in. The moment they entered his mind, everything twisted. No sterile memory logs. No clean rooms or archives. Instead, an airport. Earth-style. Late 1990s. Loudspeaker crackling. Children crying. A man in a bear costume handing out flyers. A woman yelling at a soda machine. Zixtar recoiled. Where are we? Terminal 4, Ethan's voice said, though he was nowhere in sight. All flights delayed due to metaphysical turbulence. A ceiling tile exploded into confetti. The 4 aliens turned instinctively toward the source, but the hallway behind them was gone. Replaced by a battlefield. No warning. No transition. Just bodies, smoke, gunfire. Dirt and blood underfoot. They stood in a trench. An explosion rocked the edge. Human soldiers screamed in a dozen different languages. Welcome to Sarajevo, Ethan said, appearing beside them in a bloodied uniform. Circa 1994. I was 11 when I saw this on TV. You wanted my mind, you get all of it. Valerin tried to retreat, but the psychic bond was sealed. The link held. This is unnecessary, she said. We seek understanding. Ethan's eyes were cold now. No. You seek leverage. This isn't diplomacy. It's data mining. You reached into my soul with claws. Now I show you what lives here. The scenery changed again. A classroom. Empty, except for a child drawing a tank firing on a cityscape. Rain pelted the windows. Every desk had a cracked apple and a bullet hole. Then, a courtroom. Then a desert. Then a mother's funeral. Then a college dorm playing heavy metal and laughter and a sudden gunshot through a closed door. The transitions were seamless. Relentless. Stop, one elder Psion shouted, staggering. This is chaos. No, Ethan said quietly. This is human. You want order, go read an AI. We're fire wrapped in skin. Zixtar growled and projected a burst of control, trying to seize part of Ethan's memory. He reached out, and the environment shifted under his command. A lab materialized. Clean. Clinical. Controlled. Ethan stood caged behind glass. Better, Zixtar said. Ethan tilted his head. You think this is your doing? Zixtar blinked. The lights flickered. Alarms began to sound. Then, behind the glass, Ethan smiled, and walked through the barrier like mist. See, I let you believe that for a second, he said. To give you hope. That's how you learn. Suddenly, Zixtar stood alone, no link, no backup, no sense of time. Ethan's voice echoed, ever heard of cognitive entrapment? No? Well, welcome to your first case study. Back in the real world, monitors blared warnings. One of the elder psions collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The other tore off his neural brace, vomiting light. Zixtar's vitals spiked wildly, eyes fluttering, locked in a silent scream. Only Valerin remained lucid, barely. She gritted her teeth, sweat running down her brow. Ethan, enough. In his mind, she stood at the edge of a quiet hill, overlooking a ruined city that pulsed with fire. Ethan appeared beside her. This time without mockery. You came to conquer our minds, he said. But you didn't ask why we're unreadable. You assumed it was evolution. Or defense. Valerin breathed heavily. It isn't. Ethan shook his head. It's by design. She stared. Earth's known about you for years. First psychic contact happened in '09. We lost 4 agents to mental rupture. Then we learned. Adapted. Built psychological countermeasures. We planted constructs. Chaotic shells. Dead ends. He turned to her fully. I'm not here to answer questions. I'm the infection. The probe. The key. A cold silence spread across the field. Ethan smiled faintly. You came looking for human secrets. You found something better. What? Valerin whispered. Human intentions. Outside, alarms screamed across Kthalzor's mental core as data spikes surged through the psionic network. Vaults unraveled. Memory webs crashed. Psychic transmissions looped strange Earth phrases and nonsense words that embedded deep. Duck season, 404 not found, welcome to Miami. Ethan stood in the middle of the collapsing system, cuffs now hanging useless on the floor. He looked up at the camera. Round 1 goes to the mammals. The facility was silent. Not the uneasy hush of anticipation, but the thick, unnatural quiet of something broken. Lights flickered overhead, casting a strobe of warnings across abandoned corridors. Monitors blipped with fractured data. Symbols glitched, cycling between Thali script and English letters in mocking sequence. Error, Ethan.Drake.access_granted. Valerin stood motionless in the command chamber, her breath shallow. Her fellow Psion lay curled on the floor, whispering something about the man with the upside-down face. Zixtar hadn't moved in 20 minutes, pupils dilated, chest still. Medical scans showed no brain activity. No damage either. Just absence. She gripped the console. "Where is he now?" she asked, voice low. A technician didn't look up. "Cell 7 is empty." He walked out. Walked? "Yes, Seer." She didn't speak for a moment. "Send everything we have. Lock the base. Full containment. No one leaves." The technician hesitated. "He already left the wing. We think he's heading for the psionic hub." "The neural nexus?" He nodded, pale. "We didn't know humans could navigate the mind space, externally." Valerin turned without a word and ran. Ethan strolled through the upper decks of the Thali complex like he was late for a dinner reservation. Security cameras followed him, sparking and dying in his wake. The lights struggled to track him, flickering from white to red to off as he passed. A panel opened nearby, 2 guards stepped out, weapons raised. "Don't move." Ethan paused, raising both hands slowly. "Let me guess. Stand down or be disintegrated. On your knees. Now." He crouched. "You sure about that?" One guard stepped closer. Ethan moved. No warning. No aggression. Just an elbow in the soft cartilage beneath the arm joint, a sidestep, then a sharp twist. The guard fell in a heap. The other panicked, fired, only to watch the bolt ricochet off the wall as Ethan rolled low, came up behind him, and tapped a nerve just beneath the shoulder ridge. 2 seconds. Both guards down. Minimal effort. He sighed. "I said I travel light." Inside the psionic nexus, Valerin keyed an emergency override after override. None of them worked. The central core, normally pulsing with the thoughts of dozens of connected minds, was now filled with a low hum, like the world was holding its breath. Then, a ripple. Words began forming across the central display. English again. "Hello, Valerin." She swallowed. "Nice work with the 4-mine dive. Bit much, but I respect commitment." She leaned toward the console. "Drake. What are you doing?" "Finishing what I started." "What is this? A broadcast?" "Not quite. More like a psychic echo. I left breadcrumbs. Now I'm inside the neural architecture." The lights dimmed again. "This whole facility was designed to host thousands of minds, right? I figured one more couldn't hurt." She stepped back from the console. "You've infected the network." "No. I've colonized it." Across the compound, other aliens were experiencing strange symptoms. Some felt memories that weren't theirs, childhoods on Earth, ice cream trucks, first crushes, and street fights outside New York subways. Others heard music they'd never learned, saxophones, guitars, metal riffs, jazz solos. A junior technician screamed as he began reciting the U.S. Constitution in reverse. Psychic containment teams fell into confusion. Their shared mental link was no longer exclusive. It was crowded, saturated with foreign ideas, rapid emotion shifts, and oddly compelling metaphors. One shouted, "Get him out of our heads!" But it was already too late. Valerin watched in horror as the central tower activated. Blue light turned red. Psionic energy surged, then rewired. Neural paths were being restructured, by Ethan's thoughts. "Why?" she whispered. "What does Earth want?" A door behind her hissed open. Ethan stepped in, face calm. Not smug, focused. "You asked the wrong question," he said. "It's not what we want. It's what we've prepared for." She raised a trembling hand. "You're rewriting the psychic lattice." "I'm refining it," he corrected. "You built a galaxy-wide system to connect minds. We just upgraded the firmware." "You're insane." "Maybe," he said, approaching slowly. "But tell me, what happens when every telepath in the Confederacy starts dreaming in human logic? Starts thinking like us?" She backed away. "You'll collapse entire species." Ethan stopped. "That's not the goal. That's just a bonus." He touched the console. "All this time, your kind believed dominance came from reading others. Understanding them before they could strike. But you never asked, what if someone reads back?" The tower lit up behind him. Signals pulsed across the void, millions of connections lighting up in sequence. His thoughts, his words, began seeding across the psychic web. Ethan looked back at her. "You kicked the door open. We just walked through." Valerin's voice cracked. "We'll purge it. Clean the net." "You can try," he said. "But it's not just me anymore. It's every human you poked. Every soldier, poet, hacker, and lunatic you touched without consent. We're in now." She shook her head slowly. "You weaponize thought." He nodded once. "Thought is the only weapon that never runs out of ammo." Hours later, the Confederacy Council received a signal from Kvalzor. What they saw was Ethan Drake, seated calmly in the Nexus chamber, sipping tea. To the esteemed Confederacy, we tried the polite route. You mistook it for weakness. He leaned forward. So here's what comes next. You'll feel it. Slowly at first. Some of your telepaths will stop hearing each other. Others will hear us instead. Songs. Jokes. Threats. Instructions. He smiled faintly. You wanted to crack open humanity's mind. Turns out, it's contagious. The screen went black. Not literally, space doesn't blink, but to the Thali, every telepath in range suddenly felt the same sensation, disorientation, static in the mind, and something new. Something loud. It wasn't voices. It was us. Across the psychic lattice that once connected the minds of half the Confederacy, a rogue frequency pulsed, human thought, human noise, human logic. Where once flowed unified order, now came fragmentation, defiance, unpredictability. And music. The first signs were subtle. A monitor tech on Airshan 7 laughed uncontrollably after hearing a joke no one told. A priest psion on Valtraxis dreamed of an office cubicle with coffee stains and fluorescent lights. A tribunal on Zalrith was interrupted mid-sentence by a full telepathic broadcast of Bohemian Rhapsody, complete with internal harmonies. None of them knew where it came from. But they all saw the same man in their mind's eye, a human in a wrinkled jacket, sipping tea, and saying politely, "Welcome to humanity. No refunds." Valerin stared out the observation deck of the station, her reflection warped by the glass. The psychic core behind her was dead. Not destroyed, rewritten. Its signature no longer Thali. The tone, the energy, the cadence, all wrong. It breathed in sarcasm, whistled paranoia, and exhaled dark humor. Ethan Drake had vanished hours ago. No alarms. No breach. Just gone. Her report to the council had been brief. He's no longer in our minds. He's in all of them. And now the Confederacy felt it. The alien Senate gathered in emergency session. 32 species. Dozens of languages. All now bleeding fragments of English and Earth concepts into their speech. "We must hard reboot the Cynet," barked a Ralvan officer, though his translator twitched, turning part of his sentence into try unplugging it and plugging it back in. A Yalari diplomat shook her elongated head. "The human virus is mimetic. Structural. No firewall can contain it." "Virus," someone snapped. "This isn't a virus. It's infrastructure." The room fell quiet. Because they knew it was true. It wasn't just mind noise anymore. Human thought had roots. On an isolated moon research base, a Thali scholar stared at his screen. Diagrams of the human psyche once displayed as chaotic, non-linear pulses. Now they showed patterns. Intention. Strategy. The human mind wasn't just resistant to being read, it reflected. Every attempt to understand them had been a backdoor into the readers. They didn't build walls around their minds. They built mazes. And worse, traps. The scholar leaned back, breath shallow. They hadn't infiltrated humans. Humans had been infiltrating them. Across the Confederacy, random civilians began showing signs of emotional feedback. Dreams filled with Terran imagery. Instincts that weren't theirs. One elite telepath collapsed during a ritual chant, screaming phrases like, "Only humans weaponize childhood trauma for comedy. Why are their memories made of sarcasm and gunfire? There's too many dogs." Ethan's voice returned 3 days later, woven into every psionic relay. No threat. No demand. Just a message. To those listening, we never wanted war. We wanted peace. But you reached into us without permission. You thought you could use our minds as tools. Treat thought as territory. Now you know what we are. Our thoughts are not for sale. They are not safe. They are not still. We are not glass. We are mirrors. The Confederacy sent fleets to Earth. Not to attack, but to negotiate. The psychic war had no visible front lines, but it had winners. And Earth was no longer a backwater planet with quaint weaponry and unpredictable behavior. They were architects of psychological warfare so advanced it felt indistinguishable from madness, until it made perfect, horrifying sense. In the shadows of Earth's moon, a hidden Terran outpost monitored everything. Inside a steel bunker, Major Lane reviewed the final phase report. Drake succeeded, her aide confirmed. Full mimetic saturation achieved in less than 72 hours. Any blowback? Minimal. He isolated most of the infection vectors inside the Thali web. Civilian minds weren't touched unless they tried to touch first. She tapped her fingers against the desk. And the long-term effects? The aide hesitated. Confederacy populations are beginning to develop human coping mechanisms. Irony. Dark humor. A sense of individual rebellion. There's a noticeable drop in coordinated psionic rituals. Unity is fraying. Lane nodded. Good. They wanted to know how we think. Let's make sure they never stop. Somewhere in deep space, on an abandoned satellite, Ethan Drake sat alone, sipping cold tea. He gazed out at the stars and spoke softly to no one in particular. "You don't unsee the human mind," he said. "You don't unthink it. Once it's in you, it's yours." He leaned back, closed his eyes, and smiled. "Next time, knock."